Hello, welcome back to Non-Compete. I'm American Johnson, and today's video is not going to be too fancy. It's not going to be a particularly funny video. In fact, it's a very serious topic, but it's an important topic, so I hope you'll stick with us. We're going to be talking about journalism, the role of the press in specifically in the United States of America, and some of the ways that journalism has been used to manipulate public perception of current events. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on this local television network, Fox 5 DC in Washington, DC. I want to make it really clear right away that these local Fox affiliates are not really associated with the cable news network, Fox News. I know that, like, where I'm from in Columbia, South Carolina, all the news is slightly conservative because it's South Carolina, but it's not nearly the conservative kind of fascistic propaganda outlet in the same way that the cable Fox News network is. Local news networks tend to be pretty centrist in most cases. You'll have a little bit of a bent, like one station will be a little bit more liberal, one will be a little bit more conservative, but generally speaking, they're all pretty milquetoast, and they are not like super biased towards the Democrats or the Republicans because they want to get as many people watching as possible so they can sell those local ad spots. So just because we're covering a Fox 5, a Fox affiliate station, don't have it in your head that this is necessarily like Fox News. I just want to make that clear in case anybody wasn't familiar with that, especially if you don't live in the USA and you don't know about our local TV networks. But anyway, so all that's to say that this Fox 5 News network, I've chosen them simply because I just happened to catch one of their live streams on Facebook where you were able to see the raw, unfiltered footage from some live coverage they were doing for their actual TV broadcast. So it's basically a 3-hour video of that I was able to download of a news crew walking around in Washington, D.C. on the night of May 31st. And I was watching this just kind of casually, and I just started to realize, as I was watching, at first I didn't even know that it was a journalist. I just thought it was some random live streamer walking around, and I was thinking, wow, this person seems like kind of a liberal, or like kind of a centrist, definitely not a leftist, because most of the live streams that I've been watching are from leftists. But anyway, I didn't know that this was a journalist crew at first until they started to do one of their stand-up, what they call hits, where they will actually talk to the broadcast studio, and then I realized it was a journalist. And I was just noticing, that from what I was watching live and raw versus what they were setting up for the broadcasts, I was realizing how they were manipulating information in real time. So that's kind of the overarching set piece, but we're going to be looking at some other clips along the way. But before we actually dig into the video itself and the other clips that I have to show you, I want to show you some information that I've put together. I did a little bit of a data mine operation. It's very subjective, I guess. I tried to be as objective as possible. I'll put the link to the spreadsheet in the link so you can look at it for yourself and see all the links for yourself. But what I wanted to do was try to figure out over the course of several days what the news coverage of the protests looked like overall. So I kind of divided the categories of reporting into 3 broad categories, which would be like pro-police, anti-protesters, coverage that's more neutral, and coverage that is maybe anti-police or more pro-protesters. And I also split this up into more granular categories. So that would be like propaganda would be a category where they only consulted with police as sources, or they tried to show the police, in a propagandistic light without getting any other kind of sources or perspective. And then what I'm calling riot porn or critical of protesters. So this would be coverage that is just trying to portray the protests specifically as riots, as looting, without very much context at all, and or definitely coming down on the side of the police and showing like police injuries and highlighting those kinds of things versus, trying to show how the police are actually hurting the protesters. So those are the 2 categories for the like pro-cop, anti-protest. Neutral articles, I actually gave them a lot of leeway here. This was basically any article where I felt like they kind of at least tried to show both sides. And I feel like, if anything, I gave them a lot of benefit of the doubt. So I put a lot of articles in the neutral category, even though they kind of pissed me off, because I admit, I'm more on the side of the protesters. I'm definitely anti-police here. But I did try to be as generous as possible with what I categorize as neutral. Again, you can go and look at the spreadsheet and click on the links to the articles and see what I consider neutral if you don't really trust my subjective opinion here. And then I had 3 more categories, which would be articles that focus on incidents of police brutality. I would consider that to be kind of anti-police protester. Articles that are critical of the police, and articles that are positive towards protesters. So I followed 5 days starting at the very beginning of the protests. And when I finished kind of tabulating it all, I found that there were 38 anti-protester, pro-police articles, and only 8 that were pro-protester or anti-police. And there were 28 that I figured were kind of neutral. I'd also like to point out that a lot of the articles that I considered kind of neutral were not coming from this Fox affiliate, but coming from the Associated Press, for whatever that's worth. I guess the Associated Press is a little bit more neutral in the coverage of the protests, but just something I wanted to point out. Generally speaking, across the board, these articles for this particular local news station were very pro-cop, anti-protester. Even though they did cover police brutality a few times, they covered the little girl getting maced that went viral, that video that went viral. And they had a few, and really only early on like May 28th and May 29th, they had a few articles that were positive about, what they deemed peaceful protests. But after May 28th, that kind of coverage, we had one positive-ish article on the 29th and then nothing else for the days after that. And again, I stopped recording on May 31st. So, I just ran out of time basically. But then, as far as articles that are critical for the police, we only saw 3 of those. We only saw 2 articles about police brutality. Okay. And 10 articles where they only use the police as a source. So this gives you an idea right away of what we're seeing in this news network coverage. I only did one network. I only did it for 5 days. I would love to see people who have the time and maybe more ability, because I'm not really an expert on like gathering data like this, but I'd love to see more people do numbers on journalistic coverage like this. If anybody knows of any reports, or if you want to crunch numbers, please let me know. I'd love to highlight stuff like that in future videos. But I did do my best to try to get like kind of as objective as I could and earnest accounting of what we're seeing in this particular news outlet. And I think it's important to talk about this because these local TV stations are where a lot of older people who aren't really online a lot get most of their information. I'm getting my information mostly from live streams on Twitter primarily, and also on Facebook, and from groups like Unicorn Riot. These are groups that are going out and covering the protests live, and you're watching it raw and unfiltered. And fortunately, this news station, Fox 5, did have on Facebook the live coverage of the protest going in this particular instance, the one piece that I'm really highlighting here tonight. But for the most part, old people, and especially the people who tend to go out and vote a lot, they're getting their news filtered through that journalistic apparatus. They're having the station, the studio, decide when to cut to the protests. They're cutting away whenever they decide. They're filtering it through the opinions of the anchors and the reporters, and we'll talk about that. But most older people, and even most people who just like work a lot and don't have a lot of time to spend on Twitter all day, like me and other content creators do, they're only going to get these like little blurbs from the local television or from articles that they read, and from news sites. So I think it's important to analyze how this information is getting filtered. And try to see what's happening in terms of media bias and media, what I would term propaganda in some instances. One more thing that I tracked with this data set before we move on was what Noam Chomsky terms doctrinal definition of the word violence. And so Noam Chomsky has spoken about the actual definitions of words and then the doctrinal definitions of words. I made a whole video about it. I'll link to the description, in which he termed the T word, which I can't say for fear of getting this video restricted, but I mean, it might get restricted anyway. So please share this video around if you can. I know it's going to get demonetized. It might get restricted and buried. So please actually share this link directly on social media. Anyway, that's not really the point. The point is, Noam Chomsky talked about how there's this actual definition of the T word, which is any kind of violence that is used for political purposes. And then there is the doctrinal definition, which the United States uses. And the doctrinal definition of the T word is any kind of political violence that opposes the agenda of the United States of America. So basically, you can manipulate a word by giving it a specific doctrinal definition. I would make the case that in the coverage of the protests in most mainstream media networks, basically all that I've seen, they have created a doctrinal definition of the word violence. So when they use the word violence, they don't mean humans doing physical harm to other human beings. They're using the word violence in many, many, many cases, and cases which I will show here, of property damage. And, property damage, I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything illegal. That would be illegal. That would be against the terms of service of YouTube. I'm not encouraging any kind of illegal activity, but property damage is not violence. If somebody catches a dumpster on fire, which we're going to see a lot of those, or if they break some windows, or if they steal some stuff from a shop, that is a crime. It is illegal, but it is not violence. It is property damage. And yet, the mainstream media is often using the word violence to talk about property damage. I believe that is deceptive. It's a doctrinal definition with a propagandistic intent to manipulate the viewer into seeing property damage as equivalent to violence. So what I can tell out of 74 basically stories about the protests over the course of these 5 days, 30 of them used the word violence to refer to property damage. So that's close to half. More than a third of the stories were using the word violence in this doctrinal manner. So I do think it's important to point that out. Okay, so with all that said, you got the main numbers out of the way. You can kind of see that we've already got a little bit of a bias on this news station. But now let's look at the actual coverage. One more quick note, I did put the time code on the video here. So when you see this raw footage, you'll see the time code. So I'm also linking to the link to the raw live stream. So if you want to get the full context, if you think I've cut something out or manipulated it, you can always go exactly to wherever that time code is and see exactly what I was talking about, and fast forward or rewind and see what was happening. So I don't want anybody to accuse me of manipulating this footage. You have all the raw materials. You can do this analysis on your own. Just want to make that clear before we jump in. Now let's jump in. So here's the beginning of the stream that the news reporters did for Fox 5. The reporter's name is Josh Rosenthal, so that's the person you're going to be reporting here. And as you can see, the protests begin fairly peacefully. We have a group of protesters lined up with a row of police, a line of police with their shields up.
I'm not touching nobody, and I don't want nobody to touch me.
Do you want to just stay here? Yeah, I'm just going to stay with this group. So wherever this group ends up, that's where we'll go. And hey, if we end up in a similar place, I'll explain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So we can coordinate right before, especially when we find out what order.
The protesters are obviously angry. This is a serious demonstration. They are not happy with the police by any means. And I think that the first instance of, what could be deemed real physical conflict occurs right here. So that happened really fast, and it's not really the best angle, so I'm going to slow it down and zoom it in a little bit. You can kind of decide for yourself what happened. To me, it looks like this protester kind of slapped the cop's shield, which obviously that's not going to hurt the cop or anything, but I guess the police didn't like that happened, so they spray the entire crowd with one of these pepper spray foggers, and that causes the entire crowd to kind of rush back. We can see that there are people suffering from the pepper spray. So unfortunately the camera goes up. We can't really see the first crush of the police into the crowd, but we do see the kind of aftermath. Once the camera comes back down, we can see that the protesters a lot of them seem to be hurt from either the pepper spray or possibly from the batons that the police are wielding, but they're pushing them back. Now, for my subjective opinion, I'll go ahead and give it here. I'm telling you, this is the way I see it. I feel like the police overreacted to this guy slapping the shield. They didn't warn anybody. They just immediately fogged the entire crowd with pepper spray. This really escalated things, and after this, you can see the protesters are pretty pissed, and there's a lot more chaos after that.
Fucking cunt!
What they try to do is open up Play Street. That's why they put them.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about perspective and, you know, how we view these two different groups, the police and the protesters. As you will see throughout this coverage, not just this video, but all the videos from Fox 5, and I believe you'll see that this kind of echoes throughout most of the corporate media you'll see. The police are always sort of viewed as doing their jobs. Sometimes they overreach, overstep. Sometimes the brutality is undeniably too strong. But generally speaking, when the cops are shooting rubber bullets or shooting pepper spray or tear gas, these journalists are kind of acting like pretty nonplussed about it. Like the cops are just doing their jobs. Even when they get pepper sprayed themselves, they don't seem to react to it the way that they react to the protesters who ever do anything that might be confrontational. But I want to just point out that the protesters are helping each other. Here you can see a lot of protesters are helping this hurt person who I believe was probably injured or at least hurt by the pepper spray. They're not. It's not like these protesters are behaving animalistically. They're watching each other's backs. They're taking care of each other. They're supporting each other. So really, whether or not you want to call them like violent mob of rioters, or you want to call them like freedom fighters who are taking care of each other in some kind of revolutionary activity, that all just depends on kind of your subjective point of view. To me, these people are taking care of each other and they're standing up to police violence. Now, I'm telling you straight up, that's my opinion. Plenty of people will disagree with me, but this is where there's a difference between what I do running this YouTube channel where I'm giving you my opinion, and I tell you straight up, like, what I do is persuasive communication. I want you to believe in leftism. I side with the protesters. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I don't claim to be a journalist. The role of a journalist, a professional journalist, is supposed to be neutral coverage. And so the question I just want you to ask yourselves, not just during this particular, and so the question I want you to ask yourself, not just in the videos that I'm showing you, but in all the videos that you see from the press and all the articles that you read, are these journalists acting as journalists? Are they being neutral? Are they showing both sides? To me, it really looks like they are not. And I'm saying that as somebody, I have my clear bias. I support the protesters. I want to dismantle the police. I am a police abolitionist. I'm being upfront about my opinion. I'm not pretending to be a journalist here. Just ask yourself, as we go forward, are the journalists being neutral here? The journalist doesn't mention ever that these protesters are taking care of each other. They have medics that are taking care of people. You'll see that throughout. There's a positive vibe that happens at many times during this protest that they never show on the broadcast. That's kind of what I want you to really pay attention to. And I'm going to show you some sequences that never made it on the air. And then when you see the sequences that do make it on the air and the things that the journalist says, I can only tell you that to me it seems like there's a very clear bias. But let's just take a look and you can decide for yourself.
Stay open over there, go around. Stay open over there. You see this hat? You see this hat? If you got base, come find me. If you got base, come find me.
Now watch what's about to happen, because what you're about to see is the only time in this entire 3 hours and 3 minutes of raw footage that we saw all of this journalist wandering around in the streets of Washington, D.C. during this protest. It's the only time that he actually speaks to a protester and gets a protester's input. So, and it's amazing to see. Let's just watch.
I've seen a lot of police movement in general in the past 30 or so minutes. Follow me in this direction. Again, this is the intersection of 16th and K. Essentially what happened only about 30 minutes ago was the police put on their riot gear. You can see the helmets, you can see the shields, and they kind of held the line right over here at the edge of the intersection. Things grew really tense. Protesters were in their face. Police pushed them back.
What they could do is
they
stop killing black people, and then we wouldn't have any of this fucking shit in the first place.
Pepper spray. As you can see, tensions are very high here tonight. They started spraying pepper spray. They moved everybody back, and then the police just parted. And now it appears as though they're letting protesters, at least in this area, walk pretty much wherever they want. Follow me in this direction. I don't know if you can see in the back.
Will you please say that?
So he says the police are letting them walk wherever they want. Doesn't really talk about the fact that the police just, randomly decided to flood the crowd with pepper spray. Doesn't mention that there was no warning given for the pepper spraying. But he does say that the police are allowing the protesters to walk where they want now. And then this other this protester jumps in and starts trying to talk. And, well, the next few seconds are just, I think, beautiful, priceless. But let's just see for ourselves.
Protester would like you to know
Will you please say it?
that he's got a problem with police violence. I got you, buddy.
Will you
We're
please
talking
say it?
about
Will
it.
you just please say it?
Thank you for your
Please
time.
say stop killing black people.
White House,
Okay,
two
White
blocks
House is up here. We're gonna
in
just
this
do the whole
direction.
fucking conversation,
There's
man.
actually a really
It's
large
awesome
crowd
because,
of people gathered now. Sir, we're trying to...
I want him to say stop killing
Here,
black people.
come here, talk to me for a minute. Listen, what we're trying to do is show what's going on and also explain why it's happening.
Yeah.
I appreciate how passionate you are and your anger, and I understand it. I need you just to give me a little space so I can explain what the demonstrators are doing
Sure, I
and the
will.
point they're trying to
Sure,
make.
I will, sir. If you do this, I will leave you all the way.
I'm
back.
not going to say
You're
it. I appreciate your time. Guys, as you can
you're
see,
not gonna say stop killing black
tensions
people?
are very high here
He's not
tonight. For
going-
now,
So this
I'm
guy's
going to throw
not
it
gonna
back to
say
you.
stop killing black people. I want you all to know that, you got a nice news anchor on your hands. He will not say stop killing black people. I will leave him alone as soon as he says it, but he will not say it.
You just kind of defeated the point.
No, I didn't defeat the point.
You did.
No, I
Because
didn't.
we're trying to tell them that.
We've had real conversations with a lot of people
Yeah,
tonight.
Listen for once.
No.
We're trying to tell the message. We've been out there with you guys. We're trying to tell the message.
Would you just cut off?
He's trying to tell
Literally.
your message.
No, he's
but
not.
you just not allowing
I would even talk to you if you would.
Sir, all I
cussing.
wanted you to say is just stop killing black people. That's all you had to say.
But you could have said that.
I would have let you
I want him to say he's credible. He's a news anchor, man. That's the point.
But you standing right there with him. His job is what you say it.
I know. It's not anyone's job to say it, right? That's why
That's-
fucking black people are still getting killed.
You
by
just
no
stopped
fucking
us
cops.
from saying that.
Yeah, no, you weren't going to say it. You want your the people who watch your news station are fucking old ass white people.
Thanks, bud.
You don't want to say don't kill black people because you're not happy with that.
So what the protester said, if you couldn't catch it at the end there, was you don't want to say this on your TV station because the only people who watch your TV station are old-ass white people, and they won't like it if you say that. That is an interesting concept. There is a lot to be discussed about, the role of neutrality, quote-unquote, in journalism, and when it is time to take sides and when it's not. I guess that goes beyond the scope of this particular video, but I thought it was an interesting point that the protester made, but obviously that point was made after the broadcast cut away from our friend Josh. So now we're going to skip ahead, and the protest has actually arrived right in front of the White House, and the protesters are now chanting, "No justice, no peace."
No peace. No peace. No peace.
Now, what's about to happen is the police are going to start pressing into the crowd. From what I can tell, I wasn't there. I can only see what the camera can see. But it looks like everyone has their hands up, and they're saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." And the police start to press into the crowd, and they're firing what I believe are rubber bullets into the crowd. But just watch and see what happens. So you can back up the video and watch it again, or you can go to the 25-minute mark on the live stream, link in the description. But what it looks to me like, the police actually pressed into the crowd and started shooting rubber bullets at them, again, without any audible warning that I could hear. so that they could put this barrier up, one of these metal barriers. So to me, that looks like the police were being aggressive and pushing to the crowd, again, riling them up, causing what looked like possible injuries. You know, people were falling down, getting shot at by what sounded like and looked like rubber bullets. And after a bit, you know, a lot of the protesters were pretty pissed. You see some water bottles being thrown and that sort of thing, and we'll see what happens next. So these are fully armored, riot geared out, shielded cops. Some people were throwing water bottles at them. The police, some of the police agents pushed forward and basically beat at people with their nightsticks. The crowd is, you know, not happy with this treatment, and we'll see what happens next. So yeah, I mean, the police are basically pressing into the crowd. They're trying to get these barriers up. They're shooting people with rubber bullets, I believe, and beating at them with sticks. Because the only real reason I can see that they were doing that was because a few people threw some water bottles at these armored, shielded police. So some of the protesters, I guess, pulled the barriers down. It was getting confrontational. The police cleared them out, you know, through their own violence to pull the barriers back up. Now, I've been watching this the whole time. It feels to me, and again, watch it for yourself, but to me it seems like the police really started this physical confrontation by pushing in to put the barriers up to begin with. There was definitely like violence committed against the protesters first before the protesters started to pull at the barriers. But now listen to what Josh has to say, first talking to one of his crew members and then in his stand-up interview sequence that went on broadcast.
It looked to me like protesters pushed forward, tried to remove the barricade in front of police, and police pushed back.
Yeah, well, what happened over there?
Protesters dragged the barricade, police started shooting rubber bullets, fired tear gas, and pushed back. Okay.
It absolutely is, Sharon. I'm in the intersection at 16th and H. We are directly in front of the White House where tensions seem to be rising by the minute. Follow me in here. What we're going to do is take a couple steps forward and we're going to lift the camera up into the air to try to give you as good a shot at what's going on here as possible, while, of course, trying to stay back as, again, this situation grows more and more tense by the minute. I want to describe to you what we've seen. This happened 15, maybe 20 minutes ago. It appeared as though protesters, some of them in a very large group, tried to pull a barrier forward into the street. At that time, police charged, firing rubber bullets into the crowd and also pepper spray, a lot of pepper spray. And I can tell you, you don't have to get hit with that stuff to feel it. Pretty much everybody out here, including our crew, was coughing up a storm. It burns your throat, it burns your nose. Essentially, this crowd moved back, but then, as you can see, many of them have pushed back forward. I want to explain to you now how this is a little different from what we saw out here last night. First of all, it seems as though tensions have been raised a little bit earlier than we saw last night when some of this conflict started quite a bit later. Also, the police are in a very different position. As you see tonight, they are on the edge closest to us of Lafayette Square. Last night, they were on the very other end of Lafayette Square. So basically, right in front of the White House. It appears as though they're trying to keep protesters further away from the White House tonight, although clearly it hasn't done much to diffuse tensions. Follow me back in one more time. As you can hear, there's a lot of chanting. There's still a lot of signs. You've got police over there trying to hold the line. You've got protesters screaming back at them. And more or less, guys, we're just hoping that things stay relatively calm tonight and don't escalate much more from here, because as of now, I think it's important to mention what we have seen here in D.C. still, thankfully, does not compare to what we've seen in other cities like Minneapolis, despite the tension that you're seeing here tonight. For now, back to you.
So now the camera crew kind of leaves the line of cops around the White House and starts to show some of the activity in the street in front of the White House, and you see there's some firecrackers being set off by some of the protesters. These just seem like commercial fireworks that you could buy like for the 4th of July, and some other little shenanigans. But again, you're not seeing any harm being done to actual human beings.
Whoa. Hey, could I?
So you see they're zooming in on this burning trash can, like very dramatically. But again, this is a trash can. It's trash that is being injured right now. Literally garbage that's being injured, not human beings. But they're going to you'll see in a lot of this coverage from Fox 5, burning trash is seen as like a high crime. Or at least that's the way we're I think, intended to feel about it.
So, Lauren, I'm right by the intersection of 16th and H, and this is such a chaotic and frankly surreal scene. Basically, on the other side of that intersection is where that trash can basically blew up about 5 minutes ago, ignited, lit on fire over by where our colleague Ike Igiachi was standing. Follow me over here. Right behind this line of police, that is the White House. Again, we are in the nation's capital, and you can see you've got this line of police in riot gear and all of these people. It's been very, very tense. We've seen police use pepper spray and push the...
Now, again, he's going to say that the police only moved in after the crowd pushed the barriers. But again, if you go back and look at the raw footage, that's just not what I saw at all. Now, maybe I missed something, but if you were there in Washington, D.C., if you saw what was happening with your own eyes, let me know if I'm wrong. But I don't feel like the protesters were the ones that really initiated that physical conflict.
It's been very, very tense. We've seen police use pepper spray and push the crowd back and fire some rubber bullets. We've seen the crowd throw some water bottles. We've also seen them push forward and try to grab the barricades from police. Now, follow me down this way. I'm going to take you for a little stroll up H Street. Watch your step here, Steve, my super hard-working chief photographer tonight, doing a great job as always. Steve, maybe if you want to lift it up for a second, I just want to show you how many people are out here on H Street. Fireworks going off, and really, I just don't think I can drive this point home enough, guys. I mean, we are right in front of the White House in our nation's capital.
So now Josh is asked this question by the anchor about outside agitators coming into D.C. to start trouble. And listen to what Josh says, and notice that there is absolutely no evidence given at all that any of these people are outside agitators. Notice that if you watch up until this point in the raw footage, Josh hasn't actually talked to any protesters at all, so doesn't know where they're from. But he just gives you his kind of suspicion, but presents it in a very fact-like manner that a lot of the people out here are outside agitators coming into D.C. I just find it remarkable that this is presented in such a matter-of-fact statement when really it's completely baseless. Just basically a personal suspicion that Josh seems to have that a lot of these people are outside agitators coming in.
So I've been keeping an eye out for that. I can tell you, when you are in this environment and you're in a sea of people and so much is going on around you, it is very difficult to tell at times who is a protester and who may be an agitator that has been brought into the area. I have seen on social media some people say, hey, this person who's spray painting that building, that's an agitator. They're not with us. And certainly, I can tell you for sure, the vast majority of the people out here, despite what you're seeing now, have been very, very peaceful. But, you know, I can only report what I'm seeing with my own two eyes, and it is so difficult in this situation, in this moment, to know if somebody is actually from here or if they're an agitator. What we do know for sure, guys, is take a look. This dumpster is smoking. It is a literal dumpster fire, and we're not even a block away from the White House. This is what our nation's capital looks like tonight. It is haunting. And you just got to hope that this gets resolved peacefully in the end.
Now, I do want to make sure that this makes the cut into the final video. This is the one thing that Josh said in this entire 3-hour video that could be construed as maybe understanding the protesters. He doesn't actually talk about why they're out there, of course, but he does at least discuss them in a not completely negative manner. So I did want to make sure that gets in so nobody accuses me of like cutting it out to manipulate.
On TV, I've not heard anybody talk about the pandemic today. This is a passionate crowd. This is an angry crowd. And I think it's important to remember, despite all this damage, the vast majority of people who are out here, because remember, there are thousands of people out here tonight. They're out here for a cause. And it means everything to them, and it means everything to the country. Look around right now. So, no, I haven't heard much about the pandemic. I can tell you most people out here are wearing their masks, but as hard as it may be to believe for the people out here, the pandemic, it's just not top of mind.
Now I'm going to show you what the vast majority of this 3 hours of video looks like. It's just people kind of milling around, hanging out, not doing anything violent. And I also want you to notice that the places where there is like the least violence is where there are no cops. So when there are no cops around, you're not really seeing any kind of physical violence being done to human beings, ever. The only time you see physical violence done to human beings is when the cops are around.
Iman, a couple minutes off.
Start here, show this.
I think
Let's
so.
start going back that way.
I think so.
Okay. Let's get you over here so some light is in your face.
Okay.
Now we're going to see some dude throw like a firecracker at the police. I actually think this was not nice to do this. I don't think this person should have done this. It was, I believe, a white guy, from what I could tell, who did this. I don't really see what purpose this might have served. But yeah, so we see a protester throw a firework at the police. It's a firework. And these police have shields and full riot gear. But watch the reaction that Josh has to this firecracker.
Shrin, first let me say, I'm born and raised in the DMV. Oh, wow. You know what? Okay, we just saw someone throw some sort of projectile that appeared to be on fire towards police over there. It now looks like there's some sort of smoke coming up. You could see the crowd run back, and frankly, this is what it's been like for much of the night. We are kind of in this sea of people. Oh my goodness. And we're just trying to figure out what's going on. It looks like somebody just threw a firework at police, and I believe they're spraying pepper spray back at the protesters, because I can tell you, as I move back, you can really feel it in your throat. Guys, we are okay out here, but we're taking some steps back, because as you can see, this is a very fluid situation. And it's very difficult not only to know what's going on, but to keep us safe. Our crew is going to keep moving back. We're going to move in this direction a little bit, because I do think it's important that you see where we are. This is H Street. The White House is right over there, to my left, to your left, if you're looking at the TV screen. Right here, there's a dumpster. There was a fire in there. You can see past the dumpster, that line of police just continues all the way down here. It's very difficult to see at night, but there's graffiti all over the place, everywhere. On the streets, on these buildings down here, government buildings, a historic church directly across from police. Look at this over here. This was a police barricade. And now you can see it's flipped up onto its side, and it looks like these officers here in riot gear with shields that say military police are now basically just behind a chain and some police tape. And this situation is just very unpredictable.
So now take a look at this. There's a cop that is going to be doing a peace sign, and essentially what it seems to me and to the protesters, it looks like taunting and agitating the protesters. And I want you to see the way that Josh reacts to this.
And, well, it's unusual. There's a police officer there with a peace sign.
It's a fucking joke. Let's ask him why.
And it's kind of provoking protesters a little bit. Guys, as you can see, this is a very fluid situation here tonight. I want to assure you we're doing everything that we can, both to be safe, but also give you the news and show you what's happening tonight. As a big boom just went off, smoke coming out from right in front of the White House. We're doing everything we can to show you what is happening tonight in our nation's capital. Back to you.
Now, you decide for yourself. To me, it seemed like Josh did not want to talk about the cop that was agitating and basically teasing the protesters and trying to incite the protesters. But he's very quick to talk about the protesters who are throwing fireworks or pulling barriers or whatever. So again, we see this perspective where when the police do something, Josh just wants to kind of gloss over it, move away, literally physically move away from it. But when the protesters do anything that might be construed as agitating, they want to cover it, as closely as possible. Zoom in on the garbage can that's on fire. Make sure that they report the fireworks being thrown. They aren't really going to hurt anybody. Again, no human beings are hurt by the protesters from what we've seen so far. But again, for the vast majority of this coverage, we're just seeing people mill around. Not much really happens for most of this stream. We do have a few flashes here and there of action, but mostly this is what it looks like. It just looks like a racially diverse, unified crowd of people who are taking care of each other, talking to each other in the streets, and demonstrating. And but that doesn't seem to be what really interests Josh and the journalism crews. So now the protests and Josh have started to kind of walk away, move away from the White House, and you'll see that Josh gets very excited because there's a fire, and he really wants Colton and the broadcast team to see the fire live on television. Now, this is television. They want to get the views. They want to get the ratings. Of course, they're going to want to show a fire. But just notice that Josh is not talking about the protesters' demands, not talking about why they're out there, not interviewing any of the protesters. He's really just there to see the spectacle, the mayhem, the fires, and to highlight those aspects of this demonstration and to make it look as chaotic as possible on live television. They're not cutting to Josh when people are milling around talking to each other, chanting, dancing. They're only cutting to Josh when he can point out that there's fires or brushes with the police or people throwing firecrackers and that sort of thing. That's what Josh is there to report on and show to the television audience.
Colton, I think there's a pretty big fire here. Can you hear me? Are you planning on taking a hit from us? Great, thank you. Well, guys, things were already very chaotic, and they just took another turn for the worse. We want to lift the camera up so you can see. I believe there are several fires raging now down this street. You can see up front there's a crane on fire. I mean, this is a huge blaze. We've been hearing large pops, so apparently something in there is still igniting. We're not entirely sure how this started. However, I have heard from witnesses out here who said it sounded like an explosion. They turned and they saw this huge flame. This would be difficult to deal with for firefighters, for emergency personnel, no matter what. But you've got to imagine it is especially tough and frankly dangerous to deal with this kind of thing.
Now let's see Josh's reaction to the police stomping out a firecracker.
I actually look back. I just saw someone throw a firework into the crowd. That's what you can probably see. Police, I believe, trying to stomp out. Gosh, I hate to see that. It is just incredibly dangerous. And that crane is just fully engulfed. Police are pushing people back here. We're making sure to move back as well. And this just shows you watch your step here, Steve. This just shows you the difficult situation
Now pay attention here, because this cop is going to shove this protester really hard for essentially no reason whatsoever, and Josh just doesn't seem to notice or just doesn't care.
Situation that's happening out here, the dangerous situation. Police are pushing people back, doing their best to contain the crowd.
So when the protesters push forward or do anything, you know, they're being agitators, they're being rioters. But when the police are violently pushing people back, they're doing their best to contain the crowd.
So firefighters can get in there, contain the blaze, while also controlling this madness. Guys, this is our nation's capital tonight. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and quite frankly, parts of the city are now on fire. For now, back to you.
And I want to just know what's up with this cop that's, like, dancing? Seems to be taunting the protesters again, but this doesn't get any mention. So yeah, we've seen property damage, we've seen some vehicles, you know, caught on fire, we've seen fireworks being thrown, but the only instances of actual violence that we've seen have been from the police beating, shooting rubber bullets at, and tear gassing this crowd of unarmed protesters. And yet the property damage is what's described as violent by Josh.
Well, Sharon, escalation is an understatement. Essentially, take a look back here. This is where that giant crane was on fire, and then we saw protesters throwing predominantly fireworks at police. So what's happened since that last live hit is the police pushed everybody back. At that same time, protesters continued to throw fireworks in their direction, and a group of them actually pushed a dumpster towards them. I don't believe it did any damage, but it's tough to tell. You can see right now, it looks like people were at least considering pushing it back, and then a police officer in that white shirt came up and I believe used pepper spray towards the crowd. Frankly, for much of the night when we've seen that, we've really been able to smell it. I don't smell it now, but I am being told by a security guard that we have with us tonight that that is indeed what we just saw. That was police officers spraying pepper spray into the crowd, trying to keep people back. Gosh, if you look right behind this dumpster, I know it's hard to see. It looks like somebody is currently lighting a firework, presumably to throw at police. And guys, as you can see, this is a chaotic situation. It's a sad situation. It looks like that police officer, the white shirt, is pulling the dumpster back so that it can't be used against police by protesters. There's another firework. Oh, look at what's happening there. The crowd is going wild. But can you imagine being one of these police officers out here trying to maintain peace in our nation's capital? You're in riot gear, and fireworks are going off at your feet. There are huge fires. Dumpsters are being pushed at you. Guys, this is a dicey situation.
Now listen to how dramatic Josh is when he's describing the fireworks and dumpsters being leveled at the police. And again, this is illegal activity. I'm not endorsing any kind of legal actions, but we're talking about like the childhood prank of throwing fireworks at people, which you shouldn't do. It is dangerous. You know, you could lose your fingers that way. And shoving a dumpster at people. I don't know. To me, the rubber bullets being blasted at people in close range is more dangerous, but that's not really what gets addressed by the news here. And now, of course, we're going to see a lot of emotion when some glass gets broken. This is what really makes Josh upset.
Different from the overwhelmingly peaceful protests we saw all through the day today and also during the day yesterday. That was mostly people walking through the streets, including some families. I saw some young kids. It was peaceful. It was chanting. It was people making their point. What we're seeing here tonight, guys, is very, very different. I'm not sure what's happening over there across the street, but I'm going to throw it back to you for a second as we watch. And oh my goodness, I think they're actually breaking the glass of that building. I'm not sure what the building is off the top of my head. We're on 16th Street. Again, we're a block from the White House.
And overwhelmingly, to me, it just seems like this crowd is really not that unpeaceful. I mean, they're angry, but they're not like trying to beat the cops. They're not shooting the cops. They're not doing anything to physically hurt the police. They're just they're angry, They're throwing some people are throwing some fireworks, but the way that Josh is describing it doesn't seem to jive with what I'm seeing.
This crowd that is cheering every time a firework blows up at the feet of police, this is very, very different from the huge crowd that we saw earlier today and that we saw here yesterday. So, again, I don't know for sure. As a reporter, we have to report what we see and be very careful of that. But it does appear as though this is a very, very different crowd from what we saw earlier in the day today. Yeah, so that was the very first building, and you're right, it is Ronald Reagan. That was the very first building that I have seen broken into, and frankly, I don't think it was targeted. I think that was a crime of opportunity. This is where this confrontation with police is happening, and therefore that's where windows are getting broken, guys.
But Josh thinks that this is out of hand. Josh thinks that this is, a bridge too far. Seeing glass broken, that kind of quote-unquote violence is too much for Josh.
To be honest with you, I already think it's out of hand. I mean, we had a huge crane on fire. We have officers scrambling as fireworks blow up around them. And frankly, this is just so many people out here. I would think that they would want more police officers to try to control these crowds. But it's really different or difficult because you got to remember, this is not the only group of protesters in town tonight. We've got several hundred people that we're watching here, but I know for sure there are other groups just blocks away. You've got police officers dealing with them as well. I don't know if those other groups are, perpetuating this kind of violence as well, but this group of police officers here clearly, very clearly, they're outnumbered.
And Josh is very upset that the police can't arrest people and put them in prison.
If I had to guess, Lauren, I would say we're getting to that point now. That was the only person that I personally have seen arrested tonight. And I can tell you one thing that we have heard from police leadership, not just here in D.C., but in other parts of the country, is that it is very difficult to arrest protesters in the middle of this kind of chaos, because when you do that, then you are losing police officers from the front lines because they've got to deal with the people who you just arrested. So I have only seen the one person put in cuffs tonight. I would assume that more arrests have taken place, but certainly all of this chaos that you're seeing now, I can tell you for sure, nobody in this group, at least that we've seen, has been arrested at this time.
So now you're going to see what I think is probably the most violent thing that the protesters do. They push a burning trash can at the police. And this is probably the most, I guess, dangerous thing that happens that might actually injure a police officer. I'm just including it because, again, I don't want people to accuse me of cutting stuff out like this. But nobody gets hurt. But yeah, I just want to make sure that you do see both sides, quote unquote.
Yes, I will. We're going to back up a little bit first, just because it appears as though the crowd is doing the same. Steve, watch out here. I don't want you to trip. So right now, all this chaos that you see, that is a trash can that I believe has a fire in it, and it's just kind of been pushed at police, at the feet of police. To answer your earlier question, guys, right now we're on 16th Street. We are literally one block in front of the White House, and clearly you can see what this crowd, at least some members of the crowd, are up to tonight. It's just a lot of chaos. It's a very dangerous situation, and guys, like I've said several times tonight, you just gotta hope that this ends as safely as possible here tonight.
And here we can see the moment where Josh decides that he is in the middle of a riot. It's no longer a protest. It has become a riot, according to Josh of Fox 5 News.
For the most part, it's D.C. police dealing with the crowds, Lauren, as far as I can tell. And then closer to the White House, certainly, you've got Secret Service as well. And, oh, wow. This is the Ronald Reagan Presidential Institute, and basically what's happening right now is people are just pelting this building with rocks. The front doors have already been broken down, and now windows are dropping. I'm standing at the moment on shattered glass, even a little further away, and a firework just went off, a big one, and this is just chaos. This is just a sea of protesters seemingly doing anything that they want to do. I mean, we're in the middle of a riot right now. more or less. There's broken glass all over the place. There is graffiti everywhere. It appears as though there's someone on the ground there injured. I didn't see what led to it, but clearly they're extremely close to police. You can see the gas coming up off the road, and this is just a really bad scene. The police are doing everything they can to keep people back, but this group of protesters that we're seeing tonight just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and it's led to the situation that we found ourselves in now. Oh, goodness, take a look up this alley. We're going to take a couple steps back here. That is a dumpster with a fire in it, a literal dumpster fire. And what we've seen here several times tonight is protesters have brought those out, dumpsters with fires in them, and they've pushed them towards police, almost trying to break the police line. Again, I want to remind people, as you're watching this, we are literally right in front of the White House. We are 1 block away from the White House. That is a burning dumpster. It's getting pushed up 16th Street, a huge crowd of people, and they're just going to let it fly towards police. It's a really dangerous situation, guys, and at least thus far, it appears as though it just continues to get more and more chaotic, more and more dangerous. You'd like to see this type of situation de-escalated, but it's very much the opposite. Another just observation. This is just from my vantage point. This is just what I can see. It would appear as though the number of protesters are growing steadily. More and more people are coming here. At least, again, from my vantage point, it does not appear as though many more police are here. They seem to be spread pretty thin. Wow, there's another firework. Those fireworks are from protesters. And it looks like up this alley there might be something else happening again. I'm looking around. Oh, it appears as though, oh gosh, it looks like they're about to light something else on fire. We're moving out of the way, guys. Again, we really are doing everything we can to stay safe, while also we are, and that's why we're walking away. Here's the deal, though, guys. We're doing this as safely as we possibly can, but at the same time, this is our nation's capital, and clearly the vast majority of people who live here and around the country are not here tonight, thank God, and it's our duty to show them what is happening, again, 1 block away from the White House. Guys, I'm DMV born and bred, and I've never seen the city quite like this. Yes.
Now, here's an interesting little clip where Josh seems much more concerned for the police getting injured than for the protesters getting injured.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Last night, we know for sure that several officers were injured. That's according to the Secret Service. Tonight, from what we can tell, we have not seen any injured officers, thankfully. And frankly, we've seen very few injured protesters. I have a feeling, though, that this is going to be the kind of thing where tomorrow morning, as another firework goes off, we're going to start learning more about what's happened here tonight, and it's just hard to believe that with all this chaos, people aren't being hurt. However, to answer your question, we have not seen it at this time with our own eyes.
And that begs the question, who is actually injuring human beings more, the police or the protesters? And the thing about it is, I haven't really seen any numbers on injuries or deaths being tallied up. I know that there have been people shot by fascist counter-protesters. I know that, a lot of police have been injured, but I have not seen any kind of count on how many protesters have been injured. I'm guessing we might never get accurate numbers for that. But what I did find was this report. This is from The Intercept, and it is specifically about attacking journalists. And what they found was that the police, not the protesters, have been overwhelmingly responsible for attacking journalists. And the numbers that they concluded were that there were 279 or more press freedom incidents, which included 180 assaults with 149 by police. So that's, only about 31 by protesters. They've had equipment damaged. There have been physical attacks, tear gassings, pepper sprayings, rubber bullets being shot at the press. So this is the only real data that I've seen on violence statistics, and at least as far as attacks against the press are concerned, the police are the ones that have been overwhelmingly violent in the truest sense of that word, and hurting reporters and damaging their equipment, much more so than the protesters.
that this is going to be...
But now you're going to see a massive cloud of tear gas or pepper spray. I'm not sure what this chemical weapon is, but it's being, just flooded at the protesters, causing them to flee. And of course, Josh doesn't have that same kind of emotional reaction to the police shooting chemical weapons that are banned for use in warfare by international treaty being distributed against the protesters. That's not so bad, but people breaking glass, that is the real tragedy of the night.
Yeah, we are kind of in the process of backing up. There's so many people here. Sometimes it actually feels like it's safer to stand still. And Chief Photographer Steve Williams is doing an excellent job. We're moving further and further back. And as you might be able to tell, I'm kind of getting short of breath because I believe we're seeing quite a bit more pepper spray fired back in our direction. Guys, if you could, take it for just a second here. I'm going to put my mask back on. You can keep coming to me. I've had the mask on pretty much all night when we're not on TV, but because this is such a long hit and we're focusing on this so much, take it for me for just a minute here while I put this on.
And now again, you're going to see protesters taking care of each other, giving water to each other to mend to the pepper spray, pain that they've had inflicted on them. This doesn't get mentioned by Josh. Josh only mentions when the protesters are quote unquote agitating or causing violence by breaking windows or catching dumpsters on fire. But when they're tending to each other and taking care of each other, like human beings, that doesn't get mentioned.
Right here, you're looking, oh gosh, the stench. I got to move back. Wow. Seeing a lot of pepper spray in the air. As you can see, a lot of people are affected by it. Frankly, standing here, there's so much pepper spray in the air. It's hard to see. It's hard to talk. The throat burns. The nose burns. And we're pretty far back. So you have to imagine, for the people who are even closer, you look at this gentleman here. This is a really difficult situation to be in, guys.
So again, we're going to see this crowd of people, this group trying to tend to these injured people, these protesters. So it's protesters helping other protesters. And that's what we're seeing throughout this entire 3-hour period is the protesters are helping each other. They have each other's backs. To me, it feels like they are, working together, this racially diverse, massive group of people. They're all watching each other's backs. That's what it looks like to me. They're in harmony with each other. They're helping each other if they get hurt. But none of that gets talked about. What Josh is doing here, what Fox 5 is doing, they're legitimizing the violence perpetrated by the police. When the police are violent, they're doing their job. When the protesters do anything to push back, it's chaos, it's mayhem, it's rioting. And when they, break some windows, that's violence. So, to me, it couldn't be more clear that Josh is, setting an agenda here and trying to legitimize the violence that the police perpetrate while making anything that's even remotely destructive that the protesters do is being cast as mayhem, chaos, and, bad.
Thank you. I will. And we've moved back quite a ways. It looks like police, I believe what just happened is they fired quite a bit of pepper spray into the air, certainly. You can feel that. And police moved that line forward. So they were a couple blocks back. Now they're standing right at the edge of the intersection here, 16th and H, directly across from the White House. You can see they're bringing more fire trucks in.
And now you'll hear Josh say that he hopes that more police come in. He wants to see more police come in. He never says he wants to see more protesters, of course. He only wants to see the police come in. He wants the police to win here.
Hopefully more police officers as well. And over in the middle of 16th and H here, I'm trying to figure out exactly what's happening. It looks like somebody is down because of pepper spray. That's what I'm being told, pepper spray. And thankfully, it looks like that person is getting back up. But I can tell you, I didn't get sprayed with the stuff, and it's just incredibly difficult to breathe, to smell. You feel it in your throat, and I can only imagine what it's like if you took a direct hit, and it looks like that person there most likely did.
So when the police, directly fire on the protesters, it's very neutral. It's not being couched as violence or chaos or mayhem. It's only when the protesters do anything that it's couched in these really negative terms. And now Josh is going to be talking to the anchor again about, agitators coming in from outside of the city, quoting elected officials only, and says that it's impossible to tell where these people come from. I'll tell you one thing that you could have done, Josh, to find out where these people come from is you could have put the microphone up to some of these people and asked where they were from, but you never did that. Never once does Josh actually interview anybody here. Josh isn't really interested in getting the perspective of the protesters. Josh is covering the spectacle in a way to make them look like violent rioters. That was the reason Josh showed up, and that was Josh's agenda throughout this entire event.
Yeah, it is so hard to tell, especially amidst all this chaos, Lauren. We have heard elected officials say that they believe that is the case here in D.C. as well as other major American cities, including Minneapolis. It would not surprise me at all. But being on the ground here, it's just nearly impossible to tell. What I can tell you, for sure, 100%, is you got a lot of people who are doing everything they can to agitate police, to rile people up, to make this a very dangerous situation. As you can see, there's still a lot of chanting right in front of the line of police. It does appear as though that pepper spray helps get this crowd to thin out a little bit, at least for the moment, but still a pretty large contingency of protesters here tonight. If I could, just one other point I want to make. That church you see in the background there, that's a historic church. That's St. John's Church. Every president since James Madison has attended a service at that church, just directly across from the White House. It's hard to see from our vantage point, but over on the other side, by on the H Street side, there's graffiti all over the wall. And it's just so disheartening to see. I mean, that is a church with so much rich American history, and I think it goes to show you that we are going to be cleaning up after what's happening here tonight and over the past couple nights for quite some time. And when daylight comes, this city and this part of the city, this piece of American history, guys, it's going to look a whole lot different. Yeah, okay, so we are walking over, and I'm trying to look. So there's a line of police. Yes, sir, and they're telling us to stay back, and of course we are following orders, and we're doing what police tell us to do. From where we're standing, you can see a whole lot of fire trucks. So it would not surprise me in the least, Sharon, if there was some sort of new fire there or some big concern. But from our vantage point, all we can see, staying, where police tell us to stay, is that there are many, many trucks there, and police did go to quite a bit of trouble to get protesters out of that area.
And I just want to remind you, this is what the footage looks like for the vast majority of the 3 hours. It's people standing around talking to each other, and especially I want you to notice, when the police are not around, no human beings are getting hurt. People are only getting hurt and injured, and real violence is only occurring when the police are around. Now you're going to see another massive flooding of the area with tear gas, and again, this is not described as violent, this is not described as chaos or mayhem. These are just the cops doing their jobs.
They covered it up.
Yeah, I can hear you guys. So what I believe just happened is that I believe that might have been a pepper spray canister that was thrown into the crowd. I believe what we're seeing is police trying to disperse. You can see there's some confrontation up there, and pepper spray is coming at us, so we're going to keep moving back. What that is, those are pepper spray canisters. And you might have seen an orange cone back there as we continue to move away for our own safety. Steve, we got to move, bud. We're moving back. Police are throwing pepper spray canisters into the crowd. Some protesters are picking them up and throwing them back. Others are trying to cover them with orange cones that you might have seen there. And we've seen other protesters in other parts of the country do that as well. This is just an onslaught, guys. Clearly, police have had enough. They're pushing people back. They're pushing us away from the White House. Trying to keep our crew together here. And I can tell you yet again, that very familiar feeling in the throat and in the nose, the pepper spray coming our way. Clearly, police are moving people away from the White House. We're walking back now
we're doing everything we can to get to a safe part of this area. It is difficult though, guys, because you see police kind of stay in place, and then all of a sudden they make a move, and then you got to react, and that's what we're seeing now. Sharon? Will do, guys, and I assure you, we have our crew together. Guys, we have our crew together. We're moving away, and we are staying as safe as possible while also showing you what's happening in the nation's capital tonight. You know what, Lauren? I got to be honest with you. There's such a sea of people here. It's really hard to see anything other than a foot or two in front of me. We are moving away from the White House, past 16th, past Vermont, and it's just a sea of people, guys.
Now this, what you're about to hear, I think is amazing, because Josh just sounds so apologetic for the police for tear gassing Josh. He seems like almost like he's glad that the police tear gassed him and the rest of the crowd. Again, he doesn't describe this as violent. He just seems to be happy that it was able to do what the cops wanted, which was disperse the crowd.
Yeah, so 100% that is what it was meant to do, is to disperse the crowd, and it clearly worked. I mean, you can see how far we moved back, and some protesters have moved even beyond us. They threw quite a few into the crowd. I personally saw at least half a dozen, and if you were standing in that area, I mean, I can't tell you enough. You don't have to be standing even close. You don't even have to be within a few feet of one of those things. It just invades the air, and you immediately feel it in your throat, in your nose. You heard me coughing earlier. You heard me sneezing earlier. That's not because I got sprayed directly in the face. It's just because I was in the vicinity of one of these things, and most recently at least half a dozen of them. So it did get the crowd to disperse. Again, it's difficult to tell what exactly everyone's doing, but I can tell you a lot of the people who moved in our direction, as you can see now, are walking back.
So now, you know, the crowd continues moving down the road, and the police are kind of nowhere to be seen at this point. And as you'll see, there will be property damage, but there will not be violence committed against human beings as long as the police are not around. But this isn't really brought up by Josh. Josh is much more concerned with documenting the broken windows and that sort of thing.
No, it has not calmed down. Earlier I described a little bit of a lull in the action, and that was just a fleeting moment. It's absolute madness out here, guys. I'm now at 15th and H, so several blocks from the White House now. You can still see the fire trucks in the distance, kind of tending to the issues that we showed you live on television not too long ago. The crowd has been pushed back, and it's just absolute madness. I haven't seen a police officer anywhere out here since we moved away from the front of the White House, although I have seen people seemingly just doing whatever they feel like doing. I just watched two guys repeatedly throw a scooter through the window of a business down here on H Street. Here you see a man on a motorcycle speeding off through the crowd. It's just people everywhere. I mean, the crowd has maybe spread out a little bit, but it's like everywhere I look, I keep seeing more people, and people that I haven't seen before. It would appear as though I don't even know if I want to call this a protest anymore, but whatever's happening, it would appear as though it is now moving. I'm seeing a lot of people walking up 15th off of H, but it's still madness, guys. Again, I haven't seen a police officer or any kind of authority since we left the front of the White House. There are people all over and seemingly just doing anything they want. It's really just a sight to see, and it's hard to believe.
But now Josh, I think, lets a little like Freudian slip out, because he admits that he feels a lot safer now that he's here with the police nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, I'm absolutely feeling safer compared to where we were. And it's just a really interesting scene. I got to tell you, there are certainly people out here, obviously. We've seen a lot of them, more than I would have thought, who are clearly here to cause trouble. There are even more people here, though, who seem to be to want to be a part of this group, but they're kind of just walking along. It's hard to say where they're headed. I don't think a lot of people know where they're headed, but there's just this anger in this crowd. And earlier throughout the day today and yesterday, we saw that channeled peacefully in marches with chanting. Now we're seeing just damage, and it's tough to see. Again, I mean, the guys just throwing the scooters through windows just because they could, just blocks away from the White House. Even though I'm seeing it with my own eyes, it is so hard to describe the feelings that it evokes, because this is just the kind of thing that you never thought you would see on the streets of our nation's capital.
Now, I want you to pay attention here, because there are no police around at all. There's no violence occurring. Nobody is like robbing anybody else. Nobody's attacking anybody else. No human beings are in danger right now. And yet Josh really wants the police to come in and start arresting everybody.
It's incredibly sad, guys. Basically, we were just walking up 15th Street. There were a bunch of police vehicles, mostly cruisers, as well as a van, parked. There were no police officers. And this goes to what I was saying about people just doing whatever it is that they feel like doing. They just started kicking in the windows, throwing rocks at the cars. You can see they're all tagged. There's graffiti all over the place. And then kind of at the last minute there, you saw police officers running up and trying to get the crowd to disperse, which, as you can see, we're walking through here, at least for the moment, at least with that small group of people who were throwing things at those police cars, kicking in windows, doing everything you just saw. It appears to have worked, at least temporarily. But, you know, again, I just can't escape the fact that there are so many people here causing chaos and relatively few police. They seem to be very much outmanned and very much stretched thin. You would love to see more enforcement out here, given what is unfolding. But at the same time, you know, this is happening all over the city. And it's got to be very difficult for DC police to control this type of event. So we're a little further away from the action right now, but as you can see, tons of people still walking by.
Yeah, definitely walking by.
And, you know, this is just kind of the scene out here tonight, guys. You hope it's starting to disperse, but there have been a few times already where I thought that may be the case, and you know, we're just going to have to see what happens.
So now you're about to see the very first incidents of looting, where we're going to see some protesters break into a Hershey's ice cream store to steal beverages, I guess presumably because they're thirsty. They grab some drinks and hand them out amongst each other. And Josh is very upset by this.
It's Lauren. It's Josh. That's Lauren and Shrin. That's a Hershey's ice cream store, and basically, pardon me, you hear a fire truck coming through here. Basically, as some of these people were moving back, walking away from 15th and H, they were throwing rocks, slabs of concrete through several businesses. So there's a coffee shop over here that has...
Now just listen to how like viscerally upset Josh is about property damage. He didn't have any of this emotion when he was seeing people being shot with rubber bullets or tear gassed or pepper sprayed.
In there after breaking through the door, but I believe left once those sirens came down the street. And this is just so difficult to look at. And it's interesting. People were kind of just picking up whatever they could, walking back up the street and throwing it at whatever they could. So we actually saw a lot of the people in this group getting into their cars because they had parked along this street, only to find huge dents or broken windows, because some of the people who they had been, you know, walking with in this large group doing whatever they were doing picked up stones, whatever they could find, and threw them into other people's cars. So it's just madness out here. If there's any, you know, I don't even want to say good news, but kind of good news for the moment is it does appear as though this push that we've seen from police officers has at least spread people out. So while there may still be as many people around here, it's not as large of a group, and it does appear as though, to some extent, even though we're still seeing violence and we're still seeing some destruction, like people throwing stones through windows, it does appear that this crowd is at least spreading out. And I think that may be starting to help things, although, again, it's still a very dangerous situation, and we're still seeing a lot of damage all over the place here in downtown D.C.
You know, you guys with Fox News?
No.
Who you guys with? My friend is at home. Who you guys with?
Channel 5.
Channel 5?
I'm sorry, Lauren. I was just going to set the scene for you. The intersection that we just walked through is K and Vermont. It appears as though many of the people who are still left behind are walking in this direction. You probably just heard the glass break. That was somebody either kicking in a window or throwing something through a window at Citibank. And a lot of people are running over there. I believe you can probably see them now, and certainly you can hear them. It's a Citibank, and as people walk by, they're just kicking stuff, throwing stuff, shattering glass. What you're seeing now is what we've witnessed with many, many of the businesses here in D.C., downtown D.C. rather, as people walk further and further away from the White House, where they kind of congregated for much of the night. They're kind of just taking shots, at least some of these people, at whatever they can. If there's a glass door, they're going to throw something through it, or they're going to kick through it. There's been a lot of shattered glass, and what was peaceful earlier today is anything but now. And this has just taken on it's very different, and it's very sad, and it's very hard to see because the damage, as you see, you look to our left here, walking up 15th, it just continues, even as people start to disperse.
And now you're going to see basically the last real event of this video, which is the group of protesters break into a liquor store and they steal a bunch of liquor. And Josh is just very forlorn by this. And he very much wants to make sure that this makes it on the air. You'll see he's yelling to his producer that he really wants to go on the air now because there's looting, and he wants to make sure that gets on TV. And you have to think about this from the perspective of somebody who's watching on TV. They're not seeing that throughout this 3 hours. It's mostly just been people walking around and not causing any violence to any other human beings. And the only time we do see violence is when cops are present. He wants to make sure that the people watching that only get to see bits and pieces of this, he wants to make sure that they see the looting.
Colton, it's Josh. You should come back to us. There's looting. Come back. Yeah, we can. So I'm at the intersection of Vermont and L and Trin. We've seen a lot of damage tonight, but now we're starting to see looting. That is Continental Wine and Liquor across the street there. Basically, people broke through the front door, ran in, and then you saw dozens of people leave with bottles of liquor and whatever else they could find in there. This is something that we have seen in other cities previously, including Minneapolis, most notably, but now we are also seeing it here in D.C., in the nation's capital. If you look up there, you can still see some people coming and going. Unfortunately, I can't imagine that there's much left inside of that store because we watched dozens of people run out with their arms just full of alcohol. It's so sad to see, and I know people are angry, and they have a lot to be angry about, but this is not what you want to see. I mean, this is
this is a local business, and they've got a lot of damage, and they're losing a lot of inventory. And as this crowd continues walking away, we're just seeing more and more damage. We're hearing more glass shattering. This is, again, what we've seen in other places. We had not seen it here in D.C. until tonight, and you're looking at it live right now.
So let's see now what the people at home watching this on television would see if they were just watching the broadcast. This is kind of exactly what you just saw. This is what they would see on television.
This has not been easy. There has been a lot of tension that has been right around our reporters. Josh, are you somewhere safe where you can speak to us?
Yeah, we can. So I'm at the intersection of Vermont and L and Trin. We've seen a lot of damage tonight, but now we're starting to see looting. That is Continental Wine and Liquor across the street there. Basically, people broke through the front door, ran in, and then you saw dozens of people leave with bottles of liquor and whatever else they could find in there. This is something that we have seen in other cities previously, including Minneapolis, most notably, but now we are...
And notice that they're keeping a live count of the number of National Guard soldiers that have been injured, but not protesters, of course.
Unfortunately, I can't imagine that there's much left inside of that store, because we watched dozens of people run out with their arms just full of alcohol. It's so sad to see, and I know people are angry, and they have a lot to be angry about, but this is not what you want to see. I mean, this is a local business, and they've got a lot of damage, and they're losing a lot of inventory. And as this crowd continues walking away, we're just seeing more and more damage. We're hearing more glass shattering. This is, again, what we've seen in other places. We had not seen it here in D.C. until tonight, and you're looking at it live right now.
So now I want to show you that in the daytime during these peaceful protests, as Josh referred to them, Josh did actually interview a few protesters, which really starkly contrasts the fact that he didn't interview anybody during the nighttime protests that he deemed violent. So he didn't really have any interest in finding out why people were angry, why people were acting the way they were. He didn't want to get any kind of an account from anybody who might have had a story to tell about the police being violent towards them. And so we see this kind of dichotomy where during the daytime, Josh is willing to go around and interview people, but during the nighttime, when people are breaking glass, he doesn't want to hear what they have to say.
I'm tired of everybody killing blacks like it's nothing and they getting away with it. Like, that's not right. Like, how would you feel if somebody did the same thing to you? It's not about color at this point. It's a type of hate, and black people fear for their lives.
We don't want to talk about color because it's uncomfortable. But how long are we going to keep this deep-rooted, deep-seated, systemic disease that is racism under the ground?
Now, again, let's look at the violence that that we saw. The most violent things we saw were dumpster fires. And believe me, Fox 5 really wanted to cover these dumpster fires. In fact, they've covered the dumpster fires many times over the course of just the 5 days that I was checking out.
To keep the peace, is the purpose here to just make the biggest ruckus they can, or is it just a small group of people, like we saw earlier in your live shot, throwing rocks and starting a dumpster fire?
Here's the thing, Sharon, it's a very complicated situation here. There isn't just one massive protest. There's several small protests happening in the same area. You see right behind me is a peaceful protest. This is actually very quiet. The noise you're hearing right now is actually coming from the protest right behind me, about 100 yards that way. But here's the thing. It's all about emotion, Shrin. The people here, they're angry. After the death of George Floyd, a lot of the people here, they felt as if they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know where to look to, and they're looking for answers. If you look on my Twitter, I actually posted an interaction between one of the protesters and a police officer, and you can just see the protester literally with tears in his face, asking the police officer, listen, what are you going to do about your training? How are you going to go and how are you going to make sure that whatever happened in Minneapolis won't happen in the district? The people here, they're angry, and the way that anger is coming out, you're seeing it there by throwing rocks, by lighting things on fire. I just saw 2 trees right behind me that caught ablaze. Some other protesters put them out right away. So, Sharon, to answer your question, it's just not necessarily one small group of people. It's it's a little bit of everybody and a little bit of every single situation. So there's a lot of mini protests going along and a lot of mini people who are doing all the agitation in each one of those little protests.
And I think we have to hope that things do stay peaceful. Of course, we want people to be able to make their voices heard and get their points across. And this is years and years of built up frustrations. And I think everyone understands that. But of course, we just don't want to see violence. That's what the mayor, Muriel Bowser, that was her message today.
We just had an explosion right here at the trash can, right behind us. Sir, are you okay? You okay? I'm good. All right. The trash can over here just exploded behind us. You can still see it right now. Look at the fire right here. There was something in that trash can. It just exploded. You can see it right here. People were running away. It's just a chaotic situation going on over here, Lauren.
This is H Street. The White House is right over there, to my left, to your left, if you're looking at the TV screen. Right here, there's a dumpster. There was a fire in there.
And now you'll get to see another on-air sequence from the raw footage we were watching. And this time you'll get to hear the anchors chiming in. And just check out how they talk about the protesters versus the police, who we actually see the police being violent in this sequence.
Police are pushing people back, doing their best to contain the crowd so firefighters can get in there, contain the blaze, while also controlling this madness. Guys, this is our nation's capital tonight. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and quite frankly, parts of the city are now on fire. For now, back to you.
It's wild to be watching. It's a bit heartbreaking as well, because while, of course, we want people to be able to have their message heard, we just hate to see violence, and it's a little bit frightening watching your shot here. We want to make sure, of course, you're in a safe place, right? It looks like they're using some spray
Guys,
here on
I'm
the
sorry,
crowd,
I'm having trouble
Josh.
hearing you, but
yeah,
as you can see, tensions continue to rise. It looks like protesters, it appears as though we're trying to go through the line of police. There's a firework. I've seen several things thrown in police officers' direction. This is a really dangerous situation, and this is what you hate to see. There are people throwing fireworks and who knows what else at police. You just heard a firework go off and the cheers, and we are absolutely at the point of the night, guys, where you just have to hope that nobody gets hurt. This is very dangerous. There are fires raging. This crowd is getting more and more worked up, and as you can see, this is the scene we're dealing with here on 16th Street, just in front of the White House here tonight.
It's so
Josh, have you seen?
Alarming to see all of this play out within a matter of seconds, Josh. We saw this unravel in front of our own eyes. Please be careful. I'm glad to see law enforcement pushing people back, because it's one thing to protest. It's another thing, to be able to, cause this much of violent behavior. This is absolutely unacceptable to even be watching here on television. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Josh, please get to a safe place. We'll check back in with you.
So now, before we go, there's one more thing I really want you to see, and this is coverage from Unicorn Riot. And Unicorn Riot is just an independent, autonomous, basically live stream news gathering service that exists on social media, YouTube and Twitter and that sort of thing. And they go to protests and demonstrations and events like that, and they cover things live, and you watch it live. And they have a much different approach, and I think they have much more integrity with how they cover these things. They talk to protesters throughout the events. They get up close, they get in deep and kind of embed themselves, and they get perspective from the people who are out there on the streets engaging in these activities. And you'll see just from this short, little clip, and you'll see from the clips that I show you, these short little clips, it's a much different viewing experience versus what you saw on Fox 5 with our friend Josh. And pay attention that this is in Minneapolis, and this is a much more intense protest. There's actually a lot more like fire and I guess, as Josh would say, chaos and carnage. And yet, there's just a much different tone. So let's just see how Unicorn Riot covered this very intense situation in Minneapolis.
a little bit of the houseless encampment. And this year during the coronavirus, there's another big houseless encampment. And that's only a few blocks from here. These condos wouldn't house them. These condos are not for houseless folks. On 31st and what?
Oh, shit. I don't know the cross streets.
Okay.
Do you remember?
I think 28th, 29th.
Yeah, in like Mini Hot Snelling or something.
Yeah, it's on 31st.
Yeah, right over there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
They got that second building. Hey, I appreciate y'all for being here. You know, for real. Like,
appreciate that.
We need an alternative media because the media is already spewing and saying that the protesters are the ones who are coming out here. But really, it's the police. We need to abolish the police. This is not more about convictions or indictment. This is about abolition. And if that's not where we're at this moment, then this is a waste of time. The police are not our friends, okay? Mass incarceration and the police are just holding white supremacy. And this is not okay. None of this. George Floyd should be alive, Tamir Rice should be alive, Philando Castile should be alive today. So I'm just here to take my stance as an ally. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Y'all at the wrong places, man. Take this shit up there to Cup Foods. Cup Foods has been extracting money from our community for years. They don't care about black folks. They own the whole fucking block. They are up there monopolizing. They came up there to try to hand out some water like they were doing something for the community. They don't give a fuck about us. They're protecting that store. We're out here burning down this fucking street. Burning down. Where we gonna go grocery shopping in the morning? Where you gonna get your baby Pampers in the morning? Take this shit up to Cup Foods. Y'all doing the wrong thing. I just had to go knock and bang at people's door down at fucking Foot Locker because they burning Foot Locker down and there's people upstairs.
Oh shit.
That shit's crazy. Stop busting these gallons of milk. That's not what this is for. This is real life and death and people out here like it's a game. This is crazy.
Anything else? What does justice look like for you, for George Floyd?
Hey, justice for me looks like us getting our everything that we owe to us. It looked like those 4 officers getting indicted, getting life sentences. It looked like anybody else who knew who was in on it. It looked like us getting some justice. Then look at what our city is doing. We're hurting. We're tired of this. Going all the way back to Tyrell Nelson and everybody else from before. Every single officer needs to be charged, needs to be in jail, and needs to do their time like we would. We wouldn't be sitting out here waiting to get arrested. We'd be in there fighting for bail right now.
What's going on?
Talk about it. You want to talk about it?
Man, tell them motherfuckers to quit fucking over niggas, man, and quit playing the motherfucking games, man. We ain't having that shit no more. We've been asking, praying, begging on our hands and knees, and motherfuckers still don't respect us. You want to treat a motherfucker like an animal, then when they turn into animals, they want to have a motherfucking problem with it. Motherfuckers are the product of what you make them. You know what I'm saying? This ain't for us. You know what I'm saying? We people too. You know what I'm saying? The man crying for his mama, begging on his hands, you know, crying.
I can't breathe.
I can't breathe. You know what I'm saying?
I can't breathe.
Like when they shot Tyrell Nelson in his motherfucking back. You know what I'm saying? Been doing that pussy ass shit, nigga.
Stupid
motherfuckers is finna play with you now. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers about to get in your ass, nigga. We tired of praying, getting on our knees praying and turning the other cheek, nigga. And fuck that. If a motherfucker, if one of you motherfuckers would have grab him, his partner standing right there. He could have said, no, that's too much. No, that's fucked up. You know what I'm saying? If I go in a house and I kill a motherfucker, even though he's sitting in the car, he going to jail too for accessory after the fact. You know what I'm saying? Everybody need to go to jail. You know what I'm saying? Fuck all that, man. But I'm done with it. Niggas is tearing this shit up. All right, homie, be easy, man.
YouTube. Yep, the Wendy's is gone. AutoZone is gone.
That AutoZone is there?
Metro PCS on 30th and Blake. And then Walgreens, I heard, got lit up on 31st and Lake.
Did Cup Foods go up too?
Not yet, that I heard.
I heard that's gone.
I've heard that as well.
You know what I'm saying? Straight up. Where this going on? YouTube?
It's on right now. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Man, my mom and them could be watching this. Hey, man, you didn't say that, man.
Tell them you all right. Tell them you love them.
No, I'm good, though. I'm out here drinking Douce and apple juice. What? I'm on the news. Hey, the liquor store open, man. We about to go loot. Hennessy on us. Hennessy on Minneapolis police. That's what was on. Peace up.
So that was Unicorn Riot, and I'm going to show you again one more little clip from the broadcast footage from Fox 5, and just think to yourself, which coverage really makes you feel like you're there? Which coverage really makes you feel like you're getting the perspective of what it's like to be at a protest, at a demonstration, or even at a riot, if you want to call it that? Which one do you feel like you get the real perspective of the people who are there on the streets? You decide for yourself as we watch this clip one more time from Fox 5.
All right, we are back now with our Josh Rosenthal standing by just outside of the White House. Josh, what are you seeing?
Well, guys, things were already very chaotic, and they just took another turn for the worse. We want to lift the camera up so you can see. I believe there are several fires raging now down this street. You can see up front there's a crane on fire. I mean, this is a huge blaze. We've been hearing large pops, so apparently something in there is still igniting. We're not entirely sure how this started. However, I have heard from witnesses out here who said it sounded like an explosion. They turned and they saw this huge flame. This would be difficult to deal with for firefighters, for emergency personnel, no matter what. But you've got to imagine it is especially tough and frankly dangerous to deal with this kind of thing when you are in an absolute sea of protesters. We're kind of showing you around here so you can see what we're looking at. I actually look back. I just saw someone throw a firework into the crowd. That's what you can probably see. Police, I believe, trying to stomp out. Gosh, I hate to see that. It is just incredibly dangerous. And that crane is just fully engulfed. Police are pushing people back here. We're making sure to move back as well. And this just shows you watch your step here, Steve. This just shows you the difficult situation that's happening out here, the dangerous situation. Police are pushing people back, doing their best to contain the crowd so firefighters can get in there, contain the blaze, while also controlling this madness. Guys, this is our nation's capital tonight. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and quite frankly, parts of the city are now on fire. For now.
So we've only really seen a small glimpse of professional journalism in the United States. We've seen a 5-day window that I've tried to kind of gather as much information from as it pertains to one local news station in Washington, D.C. So obviously this isn't like a holistic analysis of journalism in the USA, but I just want you all to pay attention and to understand the way that information goes from this raw format to the television screen that so many people in the USA are watching. And I know a lot of people who watch my channel are telling me, their parents only get their news from cable news or from their local news station on TV or some of these big corporate news sites. My parents get all of their news from television as well. So it's very important. We need to find ways to break through that barrier, that information barrier, and get the real story about what's happening to older people, because and not just older people, but working people who don't have the time that we have to spend, compiling information. I wrote an article in which I tried to document a lot of incidences of police violence that just were not making it on television. And of course, we also have seen examples like this clip of the police cruisers like plowing into the unarmed peaceful protesters, which I consider it attempted spree killing. But of course, the news networks are tending to cut away before the worst parts of it. It's a scary thing. The journalists out there, even though they're getting arrested, even though they're getting attacked with 279 plus total press freedom incidents collected by The Intercept from May 26th to June 3rd. The journalists have been attacked by police, assaulted by the police 149 times, at least between May 26th and June 3rd. And yet the press doesn't really want to show the aspects of police violence that I'm seeing. So I'll put a link to that article. It's intended for you to share with friends and family who might not understand what's going on, who might be nervous because of what they're seeing on television. But obviously the story is a lot bigger than what the mainstream capitalist corporate media is showing. I tried to, you know, go through here and show some of the tricks that they use, some of the biases that they have. Obviously, there's a lot more to this, and I'll be trying to cover this more in videos moving forward. But I just thought that this was interesting. I thought it's something we should all be aware of. And, you know, maybe it'll be useful for you in trying to show other people in your life, you know, the way that information gets manipulated. So that's it for now. I'm American Johnson. This is Non-Compete. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think of this format. Maybe we'll do more videos like this. Maybe not. This was a long one. I hope you're able to, you know, learn something or glean something from this. But anyway, that's it for now. But there's one little bonus piece of footage I wanted to show you. This was from the Fox 5 site. It was just a little article, or it was just a little story that they had on their website in which they described this as security cam footage of a looting of a beauty salon. And I just think it's so funny because they don't take anything. They go in and they say, there's nothing here, and then they leave. And I don't know. It's just, it seemed like much ado about nothing to me, but I mean, they did probably break some glass. So I guess technically, according to the news, that's violence. So enjoy this violent footage of nothing happening.